Good day, everyone. So, we are the Group 4, and we are going to present the gender politics in Asia. So, we are going to tackle what is gender politics, framing gender in social contexts, and civic activity and construction of identity. So, let us go first to what is gender politics. So, gender politics, it is a multifaceted concept in the social sciences, and as a term, it is used to refer a wide range of phenomena. So, in the social sciences, gender politics is a multidimensional term, and as a word, it refers to a wide range of phenomena or events arising from different or even opposing interpretations of gender and politics. So it is also defined as the debate about the roles and relations of men and women. So its meaning has been modeled further by the appearance of comparable and related expressions such as women and politics, gender and politics, and gender politics. So this complication reflects continuing conceptual disagreements in gender and politics studies. Simultaneously, it reflects theoretical and empirical changes as the study of gender politics has expanded and grown to embrace a diverse range of themes. So, next. So, these are the necessary definition to grasp the scope and content of gender politics. So, several definitions are necessary for us to grasp the scope and content of gender politics as a concept in a field of study. So, let's go to the most basic level. So, it is crucial to distinguish between sex, gender, and sexuality. So, in their most common usage or usages, sex denotes biological differences between men and women as male and female. Gender describes the social meanings given to sexual differences through notions of masculine and feminine. And next is the sexuality. So, sexuality refers to sexual relations and questions of sexual orientation. However, the definitions of all three of these terms, as well as the connections between them, are subject to a great deal of confusion and debate.
So there is a tendency to identify all three terms with only one side of the dichotomies they represent. Sex is often equated with feminine, gender with feminine, and sexuality with homosexuality. The result is that sex and gender are often treated as synonyms for women, while sexuality is only considered in relation to gays, lesbians, bisexuals, transsexuals, and transgender people, are informed and linked. Heterosexuality, for example, is based on gender and gender, while other sexual orientations raise questions about the necessary connections between and masculine and feminine. These patterns overlap with debates about the causal relationships between these terms. Although some argue that sex produces a gender that leads to sexuality, others suggest that gender and mandatory heterosexuality lead to gender distinctions. So next is the women and politics. Women and politics, it involves the study of various aspects of women's political activity, whether this entails engagement in social movements, political parties, elected assemblies, or the state. And the next one is the gender and politics. It covers many of these same topics, but in addition, implies attention to masculinities and femininities, as well as relations between men and women, as they operate in various political arenas. Then, the politics of gender finally comprises a closer look at the power relations behind definitions of and presumed casual relations between sex, gender, and sexuality. In comparison, gender politics may refer to any and all of these distinct foci of investigation. Although many people use this word to refer to formal political processes such as government and elections, politics has taken on at least two additional meanings over the past few decades. On the other hand, women activists have expanded their reach to include informal politics and the dynamics of everyday life. They insist that social movements are a form of political participation alongside state engagement. At the same time, they draw attention to power relations that permeate all levels of social life, including in the private and family sphere.
So after the what is framing gender social context? Framing gender social interactions are structured by gender, evoking societal notions about men and women. While these cultural beliefs aid actors in navigating social relationships, employing gender as the primary frame for perceiving others introduces gender cultural understanding into all social interaction. Men gain more status and influence in small and goal-oriented group as a result of this. Next point. So what is gender as a primary frame? People, as we all know, that relationship between men and women is all have a more on hindi sila equal. Like man is mas ang lalaki is ano tawag doon? Mas marami silang kayang gawin. But other women hindi ay yung babae naman is kaya naman nilang gawin yung iba ginagawa ng lalaki. But mas alam nila or mas kaya nila yung mabibigat na bagay. Like then, sabi dito ni Reg Gray, 1997-2006, however, social relations are all known as issue or we have to find means or coordination behavior as having a gender or order to relate them and achieve valuable aim. Chiwi 2001 said that have to come some conclusion regarding how to handle this coordination or having an issue about gender. We need to share common knowledge to utilize as a foundation of our gender or collaborative that we have the equal relationship among women and men. Next po. Coordination and differences. Contrast-based systems are used to categorize or mas naaano nila yung magiging establish ng gender ng lalaki sa babae or other than that makes sense the coordination difficult that comes with the structuring or social connections between men and women about the population and individuals and in the interaction of the gender. Said Redgway 2006, it also produces the cultural differences ng gender quality this generation or between men or women and it regulates the societies about the system and always the male or divided male and female. Next one. Cultural beliefs about about the gender. The sex category or word category has a primary categories like human perception or association category. We all have agreed that the cultural assumptions or kung yung naging kultura na natin bilang babae at lalaki is mas alam natin na ngayong ano natin is pantay na, hindi na siya katulad ng dati na mas mas maraming ginagawa ang lalaki kaysa sa babae. Parang ang babae nasa bahay lang. Ngayon, equal na. Parang pwede na magtrabaho ang babae, pwede na magtrabaho ang lalaki. 1998 and 2002, whether we have a personally embraced or this prejudices, or we have aware that we have a cultural knowledge in this society. Next. Hegemonic and alternative gender beliefs. So, the term gender stereotypes, or describe the well-known gender stereotypes. It explained that all international media for travels is to have a man or woman suggest that we have we have a law or government regulations that kailangan is pantay na, hindi na kailangan na ang lalaki lang ang gagalaw sa labas or sila lang magtatrabaho, then ang babae sa dito lang sa bahay, or hindi sila pwedeng magtrabaho. DHEY and Carla said that for people we who are not white or middle class or heterosexuals are the public enactment, or gender becomes much more complex. The gender beliefs dun sa ibang bansa is subgroup ba, parang hindi sila pantay or like hindi sila hindi sila magkakabuo, or hindi pantay yung equality nila dun sa ibang bansa. Thank you.
So how does gender frame shape behavior? Next slide. The effects of gender frame. So research shows that sex categorization unconsciously primes gender stereotypes in our minds and makes them cognitively available to shape behavior and judgments. There and Banerjee 1996, Kunda and Spencer 2003. So the extent to which they actually shape our conduct might range from negligible to significant, depending on the nature of the event and our personal goals or interests. Next slide. Research shows that some basic principles guide in how this works. So according to Ridgway and Smith-Lavin 1999, when people in the situation differ in sex category, cultural beliefs about gender become effectively salient and measurably affect behaviors and judgments unless something else overrides them. And according to Ridgway and Smith-Lavin 1999, again, either mixed or same-sex contexts, gender stereotypes implicitly shape behavior and judgments to the extent that gender is culturally defined as relevant to the situation. And lastly, according to Fisk 1998, the effects of gender beliefs on an actor's behavior will also be greater to the extent that the actor consciously or unconsciously perceives the game of gender to be relevant to his or her own motives or interests in the situation. So, putting these arguments together, we can see that the way the gender brings cultural views about gender to bear on our expectations for self and others, and on our conduct and on our judgments, results in distinctive pattern of effect. In a mixed sex scenario, where the work or context is relatively gender neutral, cultural views that men are more genetically capable and deserving of status will provide them an advantage over, and otherwise similar to women but modestly so. In the settings that are culturally typed as masculine, gender beliefs will bias judgments and behaviors more strongly in favor of men. In context of culturally linked with women, biases will weakly favor women except for positions or authority. So these effects essentially describe how the gender frame transfers implicit biases into expectations and behaviors, resulting in gender inequality in the social context. Next slide. So gender as a background identity. So people typically confront the problem of coordinating their behavior with another in the context of both primary person frame, or the gender, race, and age, and an institutional frame, a family, university, or place of work. So the primary person frame, the instructions for behavior is conveyed in gender stereotypes are quite abstract and diffuse, particularly in the primary person frame. As a result, they can be used in almost every situation, but they don't get an actor very far in determining how to behave. And while on the institutional frame, on the other hand, are far more concrete, like the family, university, or place of work, even if they are imprecise. They have well-defined responsibilities and expected interrelationships. So gendered cultural meanings are typically integrated into the roles that are described in institutional and organizational systems. Gender often operates as background identity, biasing performance of activities undertaken in the name of more concrete, emphasized organizational positions or identities. Next slide. So the interactions of the gender frame and institutional structure. So there are two general factors, which is the salience and relevance of the gender frame in the situation, and the other one is organizational rules and procedures constrains individuals' discretion in judgment and behavior. So the number one, salience and relevance of the gender frame in the situation. This depends on the gender composition of the institutional context and the extent to which the activities and roles in the context are themselves culturally gendered. So when the organizational activities are gendered, the background gender frame becomes more powerfully relevant actors, and the biases introduces shape how people carry out those activities and how they feel in the details, not really specified by institutional rules. So the gendering or institutional task or roles then empowers the background gender frame in the situation to become part of the process by which people enact their institutional roles. On the other hand, the organizational rules and procedures constrains individual discretion in judgment and behavior. The more constrained individuals' actions are, the less scope the gender frame has to implicitly shape their behavior on its own. So the background gender frame is the primary mechanism by which material organizational structures become organized by gender. These organizational structures sustain widely shared cultural belief about gender to the extent that economic, technological, and political factors change these structures and materials arrangements that they create between men and women. These material changes create gradual, iterative pressure for change in cultural beliefs about gender as well.
So moving forward to the explanatory importance of the gender frame, the objective of providing this example is to highlight how we must account for the gender frame's backgrounds, influences in order to comprehend gender structure that comes from certain organizational or institutional frameworks in a given setting. Um, so there are two explanatory of these importance of gender frame. Next slide, please. So the first one is the gender in innovative high tech firms. As described by K. Thurston Whittington and Laurel Smith Doer, many of these high tech enterprises have embraced a new organizational logic known as the network form. Work at these businesses is structured around project teams, which are often formed in a collaboration with a network of other firms. Mm, to to understand why the same organizational logic plays out so differently for women scientists in one context compared to the other, we need to take into account how the background frame of gender acts in each context. So sciences are not strongly gender type in contemporary culture. Um, Applying our framing account to this situation lead us to expect that because of the mixed gender composition of the workforce in this field, cultural beliefs about gender will be salient in biotech firms, but only diffusely so because the field is not strongly gender type. We expect this background gender beliefs to create only modest advantages for men in expected competence. Next slide. Oh, and the second one is sex segregation of field of study in affluent societies. Studies like engineering and humanities are sex segregated areas that feed one of the most long-lasting and significant gender structures in industrial nations, the gender disparity in jobs. But to really explain segregation, we have to take into account how the background frame of gender interacts with cultural developments in highly affluent societies. As Charles and Bradley 2009, contemporary affluent societies tend to embrace a post-materialist ethnic of self-expression and self-realization. That's all. Thank you.
And for the last topic in our report is the civic activity and construction of identity. Next slide. So for the first one is the civic activity, which is activity addressing issues of public concern. Um, Civic activity or civic engagement is any individual or group activity addressing issues of public concern. The term civic engagement um, it encompasses the both political and non-political efforts taken by the community or communities and individuals to safeguard the public ideals or improve a community. Civic action can be defined as a form of citizenship collective initiatives aimed at implementing rights, taking care of common goods, or empowering citizens. It can be addressed both to governmental or private interlocutors as well as the general public. Um, Civic activity, despite its widespread usage, the term civic activity is ill-defined and without a specific definition. For example, civic action refers to enabling people to ensure that legislate, legislators hear their voices. And it is also building knowledge on important issues and taking actions through campaigns to change the behavior of public and private institutions. For the citizens, it is for them to becoming more active members in their community and up to a military force operating in favor of civilians, including dental, engineering, medical, and veterinary activities.
So next one po is the construction of identity. Construction of identity is a complex process in which you must develop a clear and unique view of themselves and of their identity. It involves life experiences, relationships, and connections, a solid mental or emotional stamp on human. So construction of identity Figuratively involves metaphorical or symbolic representations of thoughts or emotions in an expressive way. Creating a conceptual visual representation. So, for example, personality traits, abilities, physical attributes, mga interests, hobbies, likes and dislikes mo, mga paniniwala mo or kaya mga moral code. And yung mga things na nagmo-motivate sa'yo. So, lahat ng to, contribute siya sa self-image mo or sa unique identity mo as a person. So, self-knowledge make it easier to accept your entire self, both the traits you're proud of and those you'd like to improve. If you do feel dissatisfied with certain aspect of yourself, you have an easier time addressing those areas when you have a strong sense of your nature and abilities. Sabi dito, yourself is a fuel recognition of your own worth. So, pag kilala mo yung sarili mo, pag alam mo kung ano ka, alam mo kung sino ka, alam mo din kung paano ka dapat tratuhin, alam mo yung worth mo. So, that is all for construction of identity. Thank you.